Welcome. This is Leroy Wong, and I am a technology teacher at Burlington High School. And this is Computer Science Education Week, and we have Mr. Matt Dabrowski, who is speaking with us today. And he is a game designer that graduated from Burlington High in 2002. And the game that he's going to talk about and just talk about his general experiences with game design is Streets of Rogue. Some of my students actually have seen codes and have been trying it out. And so thank you very much for joining us. I know you're working on the sequel to the game and you're hard at work on that. So we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. So I don't know if you have any sort of formal presentation or if you just want to kind of like talk in general about the work that you have done and your experiences. But I guess I can just go ahead and throw it to you.
Yeah, I suppose I could just talk in general. By the way, your voice got somewhat more muffled after the recording started for whatever reason.
Oh, it did. Okay, I apologize. I'm just thinking here. Maybe I'll put on my AirPods, and I think we should be able to hear you better. But I'll try that and see if maybe that works better. But I'll go ahead and let you start, and then I'll see if that works. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess if you just want to begin a little bit with your background. So I said that you graduated from Burlington in 2002, and do you have a degree in computer science?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so I guess if you want to just talk about your background and kind of
Sure.
how you got into game design and just like a little bit about your career in a nutshell, I guess that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, well, I got into game design actually when I was pretty young. I mean, like I kind of wanted to be a video game developer since I was about 6 or 7 years old. That was pretty much the only thing I ever wanted to do. You know, but before that, I think my dream job was like I don't know like flipping pancakes or something. That was what I wanted to do when I was a little kid. But after that, it was video game developer, and that was pretty much it. I got started with like very early game development software in the early 1990s, back when, there was not even really an internet or anything like that. So, I mean, obviously the options were a lot more limited back then. And, I was just messing around as a kid. Then as I got older and the internet got established, I started working on sort of these big projects when I was in high school, which culminated in me releasing sort of in this one indie game I did in 2002. They weren't even called indie games back then. There wasn't really like a place for indie games to like be released. Steam wasn't really a thing. Like there was just no like infrastructure for that sort of thing to come out. So I mostly just did it for fun and for potentially showing colleges something that would impress them, I guess. And that strategy kind of paid off. I got into a bunch of colleges actually on sort of that was sort of my big thing. I showed them all this game development work I had done, and I ended up going to USC, University of Southern California, and getting a degree in computer science. Graduating there, I went to work actually right after college. I started working at Blizzard. But I was a QA. I was a QA person, which is sort of like the lowest rung in the games industry ladder. Worked there for a bit, then went back to Massachusetts. Worked at a company called Tilted Mill, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was a great company. There was a company called Impressions Software that was in Massachusetts back in the 1990s, and Tilted Mill was kind of formed from the remnants of Impressions after that closed down. We did a game called SimCity Societies, and then I got laid off. Found it hard to find work for a while. Was working basically other jobs like quality assurance in the tech industry, and then just found myself in a situation where I had like nothing to do at work for a very lengthy amount of time because this billionaire bought out our company. It's a weird time. And so, yeah, basically, for various reasons, I was left with nothing to do for a while. So I started working on getting back into games, and eventually that led to me working on Streets of Rogue. And ended up getting laid off there soon after, and just worked for a couple of years, off of my savings, and finally released the game in 2017. And since then, that's been my full-time gig, just working on Streets of Rogue and the sequel. So yeah, that's the basics of it, I suppose. But yeah, I can go into detail and any further part of that. I mean, there's obviously a lot I could talk about here. I know we have only a half hour or so, but
so it sounds like, and I don't know if like game design was something that you kind of had your heart set on, when you got through college. And I don't know what the world of game design was like at that point. As you said, Steam didn't exist. Obviously, consoles, have existed. But was it something that you thought that you would do, or was it sort of like a side thing, and then eventually, you decide, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna really pursue this. I'm just kind of wondering, like, what your path.
Game development. I had always wanted to go into game development. I mean, that was sort of like sort of the only thing I wanted to ever do, really. So I mean, like, computer science seemed like the correct path to go for that. I mean, I was already doing like programming stuff in high school, so I figured I would attempt to break in that way. There really wasn't that much in the way of like college game design courses back then, or I mean, you guys have stuff in high school now, but back then it just wasn't really a thing. USC actually had one of the early sort of game design programs, so I was in that, but it was still just sort of a minor at the time. Yeah, I mean, that was always what I wanted to do, and eventually I was trying to become a game producer. Actually, that was sort of the track that I was on when I was working at Blizzard and Tilted Mill, and didn't quite pan out. But now I very much enjoy programming for most of the day. Actually, I mean, that's mainly what I do. Working on Streets of Rogue, I basically was sort of a jack of all trades, including doing much of the artwork. The only thing I didn't do was like sound effects and music. But these days, I basically do all of the game design and programming, and so programming ends up being what takes up the bulk of my time, which is fine with me.
So I guess when you were starting out kind of as an independent game designer, was it literally just you? I mean, but it sounds like you did have some people that did like sound effects and other things. And is that like fairly rare? I mean, I know there are some examples of people that are kind of like one-person designers, but how many people are we talking about when you made Streets of Rogue, and then how many people do you work with now?
I mean, initially when I started working on it, yeah, it was just me for the first. I mean, I would say I started working on it in late 2013, and the first person that I started working with came on, which is my sound effects and music person, Craig. He came on. Yeah, that's right. I met him in after the first time I showed the game off to the public. He was there, and I met him, and he emailed me, and that was a couple years later. So yeah, he was the first person I worked with, and then a little bit later, I started working with an artist who had also contacted me. This is all virtually. I don't work in an office or anything. I've always just worked out of my house. So I mean, I work alone like 95% of the time, I would say. And then nowadays, even my main artist that I work with for a lot of things, he does a lot. He works a lot of hours, but I've never met him in person. I've known him for a few years at this point, and so yeah, it's still even to this day just me at home, mostly just doing stuff by myself, and occasionally I have a call or I message people, and but yeah, that's how it works.
So remote working was nothing new to you then, I guess, when the pandemic hit.
No. When the pandemic, that was an interesting time. Yeah, I had actually just bought a house, and my son was born 2 months before the pandemic, and
Wow.
I mean, my wife was already going to be home, so the pandemic probably affected me less than like most people. I mean, I can't even imagine what that was like for everybody in your world, but yeah, for me, I was in a very, very fortunate position where my life didn't change much at all, really. Yeah. Very strange.
So I guess 2002 was a long time ago for these folks. So I guess in most cases they weren't even around in the world. But I'm just curious, can you describe like what were the courses that you took, computer science courses or other STEM courses that kind of helped you, get into college and just sort of like help you begin with like your skills as a game designer and game developer? Like what was that like back then?
In high school, well, I mean, yeah, in high school. So I mean, yeah, going to this school, we had, I don't know if I mean you guys, I don't know what you guys' initial computer science courses are these days. We had a Q Basic course back then. That was my first high school course that I took. At that point, I had already done like a bit of programming in other scenarios. I had already done Q Basic. Is that still a thing? Do you guys still do a Q Basic course by any chance?
I've heard of that, but I don't think I'm not quite familiar with that. Is that something you guys have heard of?
Okay, maybe
People shaking their heads. So yeah.
maybe they don't do that anymore. But okay, yeah.
Mhm.
Then I took. I think we had like a C++ course. Again, like this was ages ago. So I mean, most of the programming that I did honestly was just stuff I did in my free time. Just working on my because if you're gonna make a video game, um, and you're gonna do it by yourself. You kind of just have to. It kind of becomes a means to an end. It's like you can't avoid it really. I mean, there's all kinds of programming now. There's a lot of visual coding kind of solutions as well. Like initially when I was working on Streets of Rogue, I was using a program called Construct 2, which has no like code. You don't have to type in the code. It's like you can just you basically make it out of blocks, and even the Unreal Engine has something like that as well. Nowadays I code in C# and using Unity for my game engine. But back then, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I remember vaguely the courses that I had in high school,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, most of my memories just have to do with stuff I was working on in my free time. So
Okay. So I'm curious, like, what kind of computer or computers did you use, and kind of what game consoles and games did you play? Like, what was sort of like your inspiration back then?
back then, so there was this genre of. So I mean, I played everything. I played video, consoles, PCs, whatever was available to me. The genre of game that my first game was in, it was a game called Aftershocked, and it was a game. It was a what they call a graphic adventure back then. It's something that like games like The Secret of Monkey Island and the early King's Quest games, that would fall into that genre. Basically, it's one of the easier types of genres to work in if you don't need to do like basically as my it does there's no like action oriented stuff. So it's like you're walking around, you're talking to people, you're solving puzzles basically. It's a lot of like moving around, solving puzzles, talking, having conversations with different characters in the game. um, and not a lot of like action stuff. So that makes it that right there. I mean, removes a lot of the sort of difficulty that one might have making a game, because there's no things like collision detection or hitboxes, things like that. So I'd played a lot of those games like The Secret of Monkey Island back when I was a kid, and I was a big fan of that genre, and so that's what I decided to work in when I started doing game development.
Hmm. So as far as like Streets of Rogue goes, like, why did you decide to make that sort of game, which I guess is kind of 2D, not you know kind of. And I'm not saying this is a knock, but not advanced graphics and that sort of thing. Like what was the decision process there as far as like why
Yeah,
why that style of game?
well, it was sort of a big combination of factors that just sort of made me think like this is sort of maybe the perfect project to work on. Prior to that, I had been working on like a Metroidvania style game for about a year, and I just kind of dropped that at some point because. So I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of things here. First off, the whole concept behind it was something that I had gotten this idea in my head of like a mission in a video game where you would have to like retrieve documents from a science lab, and so maybe you play as a character who goes in guns blazing, who's like a soldier or something. Maybe you go in as like a thief and you use stealth, and you pickpocket somebody and get the documents, or maybe you play as a hacker, and you hack open the gorilla cages, and the gorillas come out and just beat up the scientists, and you get to walk through the wreckage of that and get the document. And I thought that was like a really kind of hilarious scenario. And I couldn't think of a game that would actually allow you to do that kind of thing. And this is a lot of like when you're trying to make something that's like a successful indie game, um, or really a lot of products in general. It's like giving people something that they didn't know that they wanted, that doesn't exist right now, that they say that is that, and they say, oh, that looks cool. Why hasn't that happened before? Like, oh. And so I was like, oh, that seems like a really cool thing to work on. And as for like the art style, prior to my working on the game, there had been a game that had come out recently called The Escapists, which was another game. It's sort of in a similar situation. It was a prison escape game, yeah, called The Escapists. And I hadn't, again, it's like I hadn't really seen a prison escape game before, and the game was really graphically like very rudimentary, even more so than like Streets of Rogue or something. But it had a certain charm to it. Like it had these little characters that were similar to Streets of Rogue. These pixel characters that maybe 16 by 16 pixels for a character sprite, but they had a lot of character to them. And it's like they got the point across without being something that would be a major task for one person to work on. So I thought, well, if they can do that with this, I can do something like that as well. I'm capable of doing that. I'm capable of doing this idea that I have. I had no idea like what it would actually take to pull that off, but it was kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like I generally, the way I work is I don't really think too far ahead about what the actual challenges to something are going to be, which is probably how I've gotten myself into the. I mean, like right now, my game has been delayed, but it was supposed to come out last year, 2024, and now it's 2025. It's getting delayed into next year and all that. But yeah, I don't know. I just tend to like not think too far ahead about what the actual challenges are going to be. And when you're programming, it really is kind of hard to predict how long things are going to take in general. So, I mean, it's like if I want to do something, I just figure out how to do it, and I do what it takes to get it done. I didn't think that game was going to take as long as it did, and this game has taken even longer, despite being, based off of the code of the original game. So that was in place already. But yeah, I mean, going back, it was just like I have. It's like I was saying, I was working on another game at the time, a Metroidvania game, and it was just this project seemed like way more interesting to work on than that. It was just way more interesting to build, and yeah, I pretty much just dropped that immediately and was like, I need to work on this thing. I need to make. I need to make that scenario that was in my head that I was thinking about happen. So that was why I ended up working on this.
So I'm curious, as an independent game designer, it sounds like you have to kind of be your own marketing department, and you have to be sort of the person that kind of gets the word out about your game. And that's my assumption. I don't know if that's true.
Well, but it was. Oh yeah, go on.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, like, what was it initially like when you released it? Like, were a lot of people interested? Was it something that kind of had to build up over time? And as I understand it, like it's over 1 million copies sold, which is really impressive. So, like, how did you get from that beginning point to having a game that sold 1 million copies?
Yeah, so initially, right, of course, you're going from like zero to. I had no like real games industry contacts at that point. I mean, there was people I'd worked with years ago, but yeah. So I mean, yeah, starting to work on the game. I think I initially applied to have the game be in different shows that were going on, and I think the first time I demonstrated was Indiecade in Los Angeles. I didn't get into Indiecade proper, but they had like a sort of spin-off show that was showcase that was like a bunch of games that weren't in the main show, and that's where I met Craig. So yeah, I mean, like when you're starting out early on, I mean, just doing stuff, doing whatever, putting your game out there in whatever place you can, it can be advantageous for reasons you didn't expect. Because like I said, I met Craig there, and he was an amazing composer and sound effects person, and still working with him. So so yeah, I mean, initially it was that, and then shortly after that, I kind of put the game out there. There was a message board that was popular at the time. TIG, I think it was TIG Source. TIG, I think the TIG Source message boards. I think that was it. Maybe it's still around. Maybe it's still popular. Maybe not. I'm not sure. But that was sort of a place where independent developers would go and show their games off. And I just post about the game there, and I didn't expect to attract too many people. And initially, didn't really. I mean, there was like a small bunch of people who were kind of becoming fans of the game, I guess. But I hadn't. I was hesitant to sort of release it on a wider scale before it was really ready. But I was releasing stuff, early builds of the game, even in like 2015 or so, a couple years before it came out. And then, I took the game to PAX. I think it wasn't PAX. It was the game. It was a game dev GDC. That's right, GDC 2016, which is a really great place to go. I mean, that was a really, really crucial point, actually, because there was about I think I was showing it with the Indie Mega Booth. That's right, Indie Mega Booth still exists, right? Which was like this place at GDC where people are just showing off their games to everybody at GDC, their indie games, and it was a great place to get feedback. But also there was publishers there. There was a number of publishers, including like Team 17 and Devolver Digital was there, and others. And I came off the show, and the game was actually very successful in that regard. Like there was publisher interest, and I ended up going with a publisher called Tiny Build, which hadn't been at the show, but I as soon as I started getting publisher interest, I sent them the game, and they were interested. I just sent them over an email with like a GIF of the game in action, and sent them a link to the download, and they thought it was cool. So did some negotiations, and then they have kind of helped promote the game from there on out. So I mean, like I haven't done so. At that point, my personal marketing of the game kind of took a back seat but I was still releasing new builds of the game even before it came out. But also, I did actually write a lot of the marketing copy, and like I wrote the trailers for the first game as well, like all the dialogue in those. Yeah, that as well. I mean, like I don't know. It's just like other people would write things, and then I would say, oh well. I don't know. I think I could do this better, and I don't know. It just sort of ended up working out that way. So yeah, there's a lot of promotional stuff that you have to do that you end up having to do as an indie developer, like sending your game to a bunch of like people who play games on YouTube or Twitch or whatever. That fortunately I've been able to avoid because my publisher handles that stuff. But the initial, getting a publisher, that was pretty crucial.
Yeah, so it sounds like as an independent developer, like finding a publisher would be something that you would recommend in order to sort of do all those other things would be difficult for you to do, like as a,
It would. I mean, a lot of the time you can do them, and some publishers are definitely better than others. I mean, I've heard some pretty bad horror stories. Fortunately, Tiny Build's been really great to work with over the years, and they haven't ripped me off or anything like that. Certainly not. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it is possible to just do all the legwork yourself. I mean, all the information is out there to be able to do it yourself. It's just it's a time thing, investment as well. The publishers also help with things like the console ports of the game. Like the game is on Xbox and Switch and PlayStation. And initially, I wanted to do all those ports myself, and as an independent, you can still do that. You can still do the legwork. You can get I had gotten like, signed up with PlayStation and all them, and I actually had like working versions of the game on PlayStation and Xbox, but there's a lot of pieces of that doing those console versions that are not so much fun. That it's really worth it to have someone else doing it for you if you can. I think that would have just been a giant time suck for me, and but the publisher, they helped out with that as well. They were able to hook that whole thing up and get a good deal on that and all that. So yeah, that's another benefit of publishers right there.
I'm going to see if any of my students have questions. So do you all have questions for Mr. Dabrowski on anything? Great. Okay, hold on one second. I'm going to see if I can switch the camera over.
Sure.
All right. So great. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it's really hard to hear right now.
Yeah, I'll repeat the question. So he said, okay, what was the hardest part of developing the game?
So sorry, what's that?
Yeah, so the hardest part of developing the game.
Hardest part of developing the game. I mean, here's the thing about game development and like programming games. Like it's always hard. I mean, there's always like hard stuff to this day. I mean, like every day is kind of hard in some way or another. I guess the hardest parts are when you're doing something new and that you haven't done before. I'd say for the first game at least, it was probably the multiplayer mode for the game. And actually, I mean that's sort of something that's still a difficult thing to work on, because it's like it's the one aspect of the game that it's kind of hard to predict how things are going to work over a network when you have multiple people. When I'm just one person, I can't, like, I actually need another person to really, at least one other person to kind of help out with that. I mean, you can go what I call dual box on one PC. It's like I can have one version of the game working over here and one over here, and me testing multiplayer aspect of the game with myself, but there's still, it's really not quite the same. It's like you can't really do two things at once the way that two people can. That's a tough part of development. But just multiplayer programming in general can be pretty difficult, because it's like basically, there's a lot of prediction involved. Like one thing happens on one PC and it might take 2 seconds, if there's a lot of lag, for that thing to happen on the other PC, right? So it's like you have to account for all of this space in between when something happens on one PC and another PC, and there's a lot of it's a kind of thing that ideally, if you're working on a game, and you wanted to make it multiplayer, you should think about it from the ground up. I didn't. I started working on multiplayer several years into the game's development, so that made it quite a bit tougher to work on. Yeah, that's. And I'd never done anything multiplayer before this, so that was a real big challenge, I guess.
Any other questions? 1 second. So I'll probably repeat it, but I'll at least put name on.
How do you manage all of the code? How do you set up the project with staff minimum time?
So the question is, like, how do you manage with like all of the code and just like the size of all the files, assets, etc. How do you go about managing all those things when you make a major game?
Yeah. That's something that I've kind of been learning as I go along, especially for the sequel, which has a lot more assets and stuff in the original, a lot more assets, a lot more code than the original. The original has a bunch of code, but like I've never found it that difficult to really keep the code aspect organized, just because I kind of have a really good familiarity with my own code, and also the fact that I'm the only one writing it. I think it'd be different if I was. I mean, this isn't usually the case that one person handles all of the code for the game. So I can't really speak to what it's like when you have multiple people doing that. For me, at least, it hasn't. Despite the size of the code, and this game is probably about 500,000 lines of code, at least at this point, that I've most of which I've written, but it's like I generally know where things are, and it's like, if you have the search function and you can search through all of your code, if I forget something, I kind of have an understanding of how I work and how I label things, and how and I can kind of easily think back to how I would have done something if there's something I've worked on a long time ago that I need to like look up. I can kind of have an understanding of how my brain works enough that I can find it easily and kind of figure out what I was doing. As for the other aspects, yeah, that's been a real challenge actually to get everything organized for. Like, we have a lot of artwork in this game, and my artist has helped me immensely in the organization of that. But there is quite a bit of work that's been done on just getting everything sorted. I mean, there's just a massive folder structure. File names are very, very, very specific. If there's like, if there's an object in the game that has, say, it's facing a certain direction, it has a certain animation, it'll have all of that information within the file name itself. So, and it'll also be in a folder structure that's very specific. So yeah, I mean, just I guess the very, very, very basic version of this is just I make everything very, very specific so that there's like no doubt. If I want to find something, it's very, very specific, and also very like I guess you'd say like I don't know, like I try to label things as and if there's something that has like multiple labels, like I might, if there's a wall, if there's say like a wall that's brick and it's red, even if it's the only brick wall, I'll still label like brick red wall, because maybe in the future there's like another brick wall that's not red. So I just try to get very specific with things.
So I'm curious, this is kind of the common question I've asked all the speakers, but do you use AI for any aspects of your production, or is it something that you feel like would not be helpful to you? But like, how do you see the role of AI for yourself, and maybe even just for the industry at large?
Well, currently I don't. People have tried to convince me to use AI to help out with the coding. I tried a little bit. Just to see like what it could do. I mean, there's probably, I know there's more that it can do that I haven't really sort of worked with yet. I had to like analyze my project or parts of my project and see like, okay, how could I optimize this? And it gave me some good hints, except that I had like done all of those things already. And I know it's good for writing sort of like if you need to write a boilerplate algorithm, it can do those really well. The thing is, like, the project is so big at this point. I don't know, like again, yeah, I'd have to mess around with it some more to see what it could really do. Maybe it's better at doing things than I think it would be, but I don't know. I suspect it would have. I also just like to know what my code is doing. Which is why I like to write it myself. I mean, if there's a bunch of code that's like just doing something that I didn't write, that might make me a little bit nervous. As for other aspects of the project, no, we're not using it for art or anything like that. I do see aspects where it could be used that I think would be, okay ethically. For example, like for the cars in the game, they have 24 angles for each car in the game, and there's like multiple animation frames for each of those angles. So it was a lot of work to do all of the car, like, yeah. When cars are turning around, this is for Streets of Rogue 2, by the way, which has cars. When they're turning around, there's 24 different angles. It's a lot of work for the artist, like a lot of work to do something like that. And I could see a scenario where AI would be used to sort of, maybe the artist does like 8 angles instead, and the AI like is able to say like, okay, this is what it looked like at these other angles. And so you're not really compromising like the artistic integrity of the car. It's just doing what the artist would do anyways. Just it's sort of reducing busy work, I guess. If that makes sense. Yeah. I can see basically as ways to make things more efficient, and reduce busy work. But Again, I'm not even sure if it's very good at doing that sort of thing yet. It's just sort of something I thought maybe in the future, who knows? But no, I'm not. As for AI in the games industry, I mean, like there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of good, really good ethical uses, and some less ethical uses. You might have seen the recent Call of Duty game, and I think people are kind of calling that out. The latest Call of Duty game has sort of been notorious for having a lot of AI generated assets in it, and including like just major parts of major things in the game, like achievements, just stuff, just people just generated with like Google or ChatGPT or whatever. Not even particularly well. There was like a promotional image where a zombie had 6 fingers or something like that. And I think people are largely kind of rejecting that sort of stuff. I mean, AI is obviously going to get better over time, so maybe it'll be more difficult to tell, what's AI and what's not. And these companies seem to be embracing it, but I don't know. This is a real big topic, and it'll be interesting to see where this goes in the next couple of years, because things are progressing pretty rapidly.
All right, so this has been an amazing talk. I do want to just sort of respect Mr. Chow's time, because Peter is actually here in person. But I did have just one final thing to ask you. If you could just sort of, just give the students some words of wisdom, like if they want to have a career in game design, or just, some sort of independent development, like what advice can you give them just for the future? Like what should they do in college? What should they try to do, in terms of the tech industry, gaming industry, whatever?
Sure. Well, it's my biggest advice in general is just start like doing something right now. If you want to do something, if there's a game you want to make, if there's an idea that you have, I mean, you can probably do it right now. Like, you can get started. There's so much great tech and information out there for people who just want to get started making something. Like, there's no excuse to not do it at this point. And also the other thing is just like, don't be afraid of your own like limitations. I used to have this kind of fear that I would be working on the job one day programming, and I would just not know how to do something, and I would get like fired because I just couldn't do the thing. And I mean, the truth is, like, making games by yourself at least has been very empowering for me, because what I realized is, like, every time I want to do something, I just figure out a way to do it. I go on the internet. It can be a pain sometimes to do those things, and a lot of, I will say this, like, working in game development is you kind of need a high threshold for pain sometimes, but like, it's almost always possible to do the thing you wanted to do. Like I said, I didn't know anything about multiplayer before I started working on multiplayer for this game, and it just like, no, I have to do it. I just like push through, and this is a pain, but it worked, and it works, and like, yeah, I don't know. You're capable of more than you think you are, probably. So that's something to remember. Like, just don't shortchange yourself.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Dabrowski. Give him a round of applause. So we really appreciate your time and speaking with us. And best of luck with Streets of Rogue 2. We're looking forward to seeing it. And I know you're a very busy man, but we do have kind of like a career exploration / internship program in the spring. And if you happen to have another half hour, maybe to talk to any of our interns that are working in game design, it'd be great to have a follow-up conversation with you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if anybody here in this class, has any further questions or whatever for me, you feel free to email me.
Thank you so much.
I don't have I got time. Don't worry. It takes me a while to follow up on emails sometimes, but
Okay.
Don't worry about it. Like, please, I'm happy to help out where I can.
All right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
Right.
Thank you guys
Take
for
care.
having me.
All right. Bye-bye. Take care.